Hi, my name is Paul Brady. I'm the Director of Inbound Marketing with the Center for National Investing. Today I'd like to talk to you about one of our programs, the American Buyout. Now, American Buyout has several objectives, and I'd like to walk through some of those with you. So our first objective is to provide livable wages. We also would like to provide universal health care, universal education, and tax and debt relief. Now, you might be asking yourself, that's a lot. How are you going to do all that? Well, so there are two questions here that probably most of you are asking specifically. One is, where does all the money come from? And two is, how is it managed? Both great questions. So let's answer the first question. Where does money come from? The money comes from something that we call market surplus. So in market surplus, you might say, well, what is market surplus? Well, market surplus is really just excess production. And excess production is represented by, a good example would be dairy farmers. So dairy farmers that dump milk, excess milk, to keep prices from plummeting, they produce a lot of milk and they dump a lot of it to keep the price stable. That's excess production. Or going to McDonald's and ordering, a hamburger. If you work at McDonald's, you may make 5 or 6 hamburgers out of 20, and 10 of them might get thrown out because they expire before someone buys them. So that excess production is represented by that type of activity. So what is the value to that? I mean, what is that? Is there a value? Yeah, there is. We estimate the excess production in the U.S. economy to be roughly $7.5 trillion or above. Now think about that for a minute. That's $7.5 trillion. That's more than enough to pay for all these programs. So then you'd say, okay, well the question now is, how does this work? Well, so when you're talking about production in a conventional economy, it's always, economists usually say production equals income. And there's some basis that goes back to, way back actually, to the 30s and beyond that. But this is not correct. Production does not equal income. And the reason for that is that we have excess production. And that excess production is not being measured here in this pool. So let's talk about this a little bit. Production, obviously greater than income. But let's talk about it, right? So you have this area here that's labor, and you have this pool of value here called production. Okay? So in labor, we have a little I here that represents an individual within labor. Now labor isn't just people that are employed. It can be people that aren't employed. It can be people that are laborers, people that are, have consulting jobs. It can be anyone in the workforce or not, depending. So in this particular example, let's talk about how it works with someone in labor. So this individual, let's say they're at McDonald's. They're working 40 hours a week, and they're providing a value represented by the $V here. They're providing a value to production. Okay, now that value is then returned from production to the individual in the form of wages, which is the $W here. So again, under a conventional economy where production equals income, that's how that's measured. You provide a value, you get a wage back in return. But what happens with the excess production? I talked about McDonald's. So this person works at McDonald's. They work on the line, and they're creating 50 hamburgers a day, of which 30 are thrown out because it's a slow day, let's say, right? What happens with that? What happens to that? Well, that's excess production. So in excess production, the laborer is providing this separate flow into this other pool of value. So from there, they're providing, let's say, V prime, represented by $V1 here. And so they send that, and then what they get back from that excess production is what? A percentage of V prime. So there's a big difference between the two, right? This one, in the conventional economy where production equals income, they're putting in a value and they're getting a wage. Now these could be far off of each other. For example, in McDonald's, they may be putting a lot more value than they're getting back in a wage, let's say. I don't know. But now you look at it and you take that same example and you say, well, there's this excess production, all those hamburgers that weren't counted. What happens to those? Well, you measure that as a value as well. So over here, the same individual laborer at McDonald's is putting in a V prime value and they're getting back a percentage of V prime. That percentage of V prime represents livable wages. So to answer our second question here, how is it managed? Well, it's managed through this process we call national vesting. And this arrow here that comes in and says, well, when someone gives value to excess production, they get back a percentage of that value. Getting that percentage of value back is called national vesting. And it's based on a well-known program called quantitative easing, which we've talked about in other videos. But quantitative easing is known throughout the world. Different economies have used it to pull themselves out of recessions, as I mentioned earlier. And all we're doing is putting a little spin on it, which we'll get into in a different video. But basically, that is what national vesting is. You're getting that value back from the excess production. So the first question, where does the money come from? Market surplus. How is it managed? National vesting. And what does that look like? A distribution back from excess production out of the $7.5 trillion that's sitting in here in the U.S. to the individual as a percentage of what they put in. My name is Paul Brady. I thank you for watching this video. Please visit our website, www.centerfornationalinvesting.org, and look for more value there. Thanks very much.